Welcome to the Catalyst Sale Podcast. Whether you are a sales professional, not in sales, but interested in helping solve problems, or a founder, CEO who is looking to grow your business, you'll find practical tools, stories, and experience you can apply to your role. I'm your host, Jody Mayberry, and I'm here with the co-founder of Catalyst Sale, Mike Simmons. Hello, Mike.
Hey, Jody. How you doing?
I am doing great today. I'm very excited about this conversation we have coming up.
I am really excited about this conversation. I've been looking forward to this one for a while.
Yes, me too. We have JJ Peterson, the Chief of Staff for StoryBrand. JJ, before we introduce you, I want to say this is Don Miller. He was kind of your opening act because he came on first and now it's you. So welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I usually have to come clean up his messes anyway, so I'm glad. Just kidding.
Well, this works out great. I mean, we're going to get into StoryBrand and what you do there and more about the framework. But I have to tell you, I really enjoy the show you do with Don, Building a StoryBrand. It is one of my favorites. I never miss an episode. And not only is it really informative, you two are so entertaining together.
Oh, thanks. We have a lot of fun. And as you know, doing podcasts, the edit button helps us a lot. But we have a really good time. We just decided early on that we wanted it to feel like we were sitting down, around a campfire, drinking a glass of whiskey and chatting with a friend. And that's kind of what it turned into. So it was really fun.
Well, I have to tell you, though, my heart sank a little bit when you had Lee Cockrell as a guest on the show. And as a gift, you offered Don one of your special Disney pins and he turned you down.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I'm still a little bitter about that. Because he doesn't know. He doesn't know the magic of the pins. Yeah, I am a pin collector. It actually started when I would go to Disneyland's with my young nephews and nieces. And, you end up doing all the kid rides with them. And so it's not quite the same experience. And to kind of up the level of experience, I started getting into pins and kind of making it a fun little adventure when I would go with them and we'd find hidden Mickeys and all this stuff and collect sets. And so I started kind of as a way of doing extra with my nephews and nieces. And then I actually really got into it and have a big collection myself.
Yes. I have 2 kids, so they are really into it. And it's really hard once you get started for a kid to not get into it yourself. Yes.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
Well, Mike Simmons, this is going to be good because we had Donald Miller as a guest. And since that time, you have really dug in to StoryBrand. And so now we have JJ on. So give us an idea of what you have done with StoryBrand in between talking with Don Miller and now.
Well, first, anytime that we start talking about a new product or start talking about a new service that we want to promote in the marketplace, everybody in the organization has to see a brand script related to it, which I think drives them nuts, but allows me to kind of collect thoughts and create organization. And now we've been able to set some expectations. So JJ, you and Don have definitely made an impact.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's what you really with everybody. For me, when I came to StoryBrand a long time ago, a few years ago, I came as a client. I actually came to one of the very first workshops that StoryBrand put on. I was pitching a TV show in LA. And I'd become friends with Don, and he had said, why don't you come out and figure out how to pitch your show even better by going through this process? And I would not have considered myself, I studied communications, I taught communications, I even did public relations for a long time, but I didn't consider myself like a clear marketer or salesperson at all. Pitching a television show to networks was not my idea of a good time. I was not excited about it. And I came to StoryBrand and it changed everything for me because it gave me a really clear framework to be able to do sales pitches, to do emails, to do marketing and all that stuff. Just made it really easy. And it all starts with this tool that we call a brand script, basically creating your story into a script that goes down on one piece of paper. And I do the same thing now. Going back to that real quick, I actually used a brand script. We pitched it. It got picked up. We got us meetings with Discovery Channel and CMT and a whole bunch of other people got picked up. Then, as often happens in Hollywood, got dropped. But once I got that brand script tool in my hand, it changed everything for me. And now it's same thing. Even, for us, when we get ready to launch a new product or we're in a meeting, we're going to meet with a new big client or anything like that, we sit down and create a brand script, and that informs everything for us. We have them all over our office. They're on our refrigerator. They're in my office. They're everywhere, so that we just kind of are reminded how to talk to customers in a way that helps them pay attention to what's important and engage and actually ultimately buy.
And I think what's interesting about it, or at least what's resonated with me, is it just makes sense. I mean, we can all relate to the story of a hero who meets a guide, and we've seen that in the movies. And in a sales role, there are a lot of sales professionals that are out there, and a lot of people out there who just want to be the hero, want to be the hero, want to be the hero. And what they forget is that the strongest role in that movie or that story or that discussion is really that of the guide. Can you speak to that a bit?
Yeah, I think, it's when we say that companies want to be the hero, it's not always because they're arrogant or want to be flashy or anything. It really, I think, comes out of insecurity. We feel like we have to talk ourselves up a ton or talk our product or our service up a ton so that people will understand the value that we bring to the table. But like if you go to any party and you sit there and you're meeting somebody and they're just talking about themselves the whole time, you automatically know this person is incredibly insecure and might even be a jerk, right? Like there's that skit on Saturday Night Live that there was that lady Penelope. I don't know if you remember that skit, but somebody would go, "Oh, I went to Europe last week." And she would just try to one up the story. She's like, "Oh, I went to Europe and I also then bought Europe, and Europe is my favorite country and everybody in Europe loves me." She would one up everything. Well, that's like, we know those people at parties, and they annoy us at parties when they only talk about themselves. And yet then when it comes to sales or marketing, we think we have to be that person. We have to all of a sudden talk about ourselves a lot. And what we think we're doing in that is showing the value that we bring to the table. But that actually makes us come across as really insecure and that we don't believe in our product or our service, and people can smell that. And in any good movie, the strongest character in the movie is not the hero. The hero doesn't actually become the hero until the end of the film. The strongest character in any movie is the guide. And in a good story, the guide actually doesn't transform through the story. They stay the same. They're the same at the beginning as they are at the end. It's the hero that has the ups and downs. They do good, and then they become arrogant and they fall apart. And then they recover, and it's just this up, down, up, down, up, down through the whole movie until the very end when they've actually accomplished their ultimate goal. But the guide stays the same. So you can even have a movie about a guide. Like in the movie Mary Poppins is actually not the hero of Mary Poppins. The dad is, because the dad is the one who goes through the transformation. Mary Poppins is there to help the father achieve what he wants to ultimately achieve, which is connection with his children and to be a good dad. But Mary Poppins, we don't know her backstory. We don't know where she came from. We don't know where she's going. We don't know if she has children or she's married. We know very little about Mary Poppins other than that she's there to serve the family's journey. And that really is ultimately what a good marketing and good branding does for a company, is it positions them as the guide to the customer's journey, to the hero's journey, and your hero is your customer. And when you position yourself as a guide, you're actually the strongest character in the story because you're there to serve your customer in a way that helps them accomplish what they want.
And when I look at the brand script, I don't see anything about feature functionality. It's not, here's what we do, and here's the feature functionality, and this is how you're going to use it, and all of that other kind of stuff. So why do we, either as marketers or as sales professionals or as people who are trying to pitch a product, why do we feel like we've got to fall on feature functionality rather than really focusing on our customer and what our customer is trying to do and the story that they're a part of?
Because the features are about us. Okay. And so it gets really easy. The features are about us. But when we stop at feature, we stop the story at us. What you actually need to talk about is the benefit that the feature brings, because the benefit is then about the customer. So features are about us. Benefits are about the customer. So even when you're talking about, like, say, hey, the first thing you need to do is set up a sales call with me. Well, why does that sales call matter to them? Go to the benefit of the sales call. So you can, instead of just saying step 1, set up a call with me, you can say step 1, when you set up a call with me, you're going to immediately begin to find clarity in where you're headed financially. Or you're going to when we set up a call, we're going to make sure right away whether we are a good fit, so we're not wasting any of your time, right? So now I'm making the story about them, not about me. And features, the benefits about the customer.
Yeah, and there's a subtle nuance there that I think is really important and gets lost. So many people get focused on this idea of, all right, I've got to have that next step and I want to get that call and I want to get the call on the calendar, or I want to get the discussion, or I want to get the response, or I want to get whatever. What they forget about is that why behind why the customer should engage in that discussion, how they're going to benefit from that discussion, why that discussion is worth their time. Because keep in mind, when they're giving their time, they're trading with you. They're trading time that should be spent or could be spent on something else.
Exactly. And features aren't bad, because features, when you discuss features, it allows people to see how you work and helps them understand quickly kind of the process. In the BrandScript, so just to kind of go back for people who might have not heard about the BrandScript and how story works. If you were writing a movie, there might be like 30 different plot points you had to hit in a story. But for the sake of branding and clear story, there's really just 7 things you have to hit on and understand to tell the story of your customer. And first, you have to identify who the character is. So that's your customer. And you need to know what the customer wants and who they want to be. That's the first step. Then, and that's all in relationship to your brand. So do they want consulting, or do they want you to mow their lawn, or do they want new shoes? What is it that they want? And that needs to be really clear. And then step 2 is, what is the problem to get in the way of them getting that? Your brand needs to position yourself as somebody who solves the problem for the customers. If there's no problem in a story, there is no story. If Liam Neeson's daughter gets kidnapped for the 12th time and she ends up calling him from Europe and saying, "Hey, it was just a joke, Dad, but we want you to come over here and just go shopping with me," that's not a good movie, right? There has to be a problem that has to be solved. So you have to identify what is the problem that is getting in the way of what your customer wants, and position yourself as a brand that solves problems. And you need to talk about that over and over. And there's 3 different levels of problem that we get into in our workshop, but basically understand that you are a brand who solves problems. The third step is then that you have to position yourself as the guide who solves those problems. And you do that 2 ways, with empathy and authority. You say, we understand your problems. We get it because we've experienced it, or we've had customers who experienced it. That's empathy. And authority is, we've helped other people solve these problems. So that can be testimonies or statistics. And this is just a small little thing that you add to it to say that we are your guide with empathy and authority. Then the guide, step 4, gives them a plan. And this is actually where some features can come into play. Any good movie, you will see, like if you see that's like a heist movie, if you see like Ocean's 11 or anything like that, there comes a moment in the movie where they literally sit down and say, here's the plan, right? It doesn't matter if you're robbing the Bellagio, it's impossible, it's never been done before. The audience has to see that there is a way forward. And so they literally sit down and say, here's the plan. And then they walk you step by step through how it's going to be accomplished. Well, it's the same thing with your branding. Your customer needs to be able to see that there is a way forward for them and that it's easy and clear. And so this is a spot, and usually we recommend that you give a 3-step plan. You may have 20 things that you do with your customer, to like say you're a financial advisor and you have 20 things you need to do, or you're a consultant or any service that you offer and there's 20 things, boil it down to 3. People, it's called the rule of 3s. People remember things in 3s. So boil it down to 1, 2, 3. And what you're showing your customer in that is there's an easy way forward for them to accomplish what they want. We think by adding more steps that we're showing more value, but all we're doing is confusing people. They won't remember. They'll be overwhelmed. So 1, 2, 3. And this is where you can list the features. So first we do this, second we do this, and third we do this. However, don't end with the feature. Always give me the benefit. If you just give feature, it talks about you. Benefit talks about the customer. Yep. So tell me, what is the benefit for them? Then the next step 6 is you have to have a clear call to action. You have to call them to move. People not move on their own, and the calls to action need to be clear and compelling. You need to quickly be able to say, what's the next thing you want them to do in the process? Do you want them to call you? Do you want them to set up an appointment? Do you want them to buy now? This needs to be very clear of what they need to do next. They can't guess. And then lastly, you have to show them their stakes in this story, that things could go well, which is ultimately their life ends in success, or things could go poorly and it ends in failure. Continue to experience the frustrations and that they've been experiencing before they bought your product. And you have to speak to both of these. There has to be something at stake in the story, or there's no reason to ask of them to buy. So character who has a problem, who connects with a guide, who gives them a plan, who then calls them to action. And then we know their stakes that either there can be success or failure. So that's kind of the StoryBrand framework. And you sit down, and once you identify those buckets, you can then, what we call them buckets of the little plot points. Once you identify those, then you're actually able to create marketing and messaging that is not only clear, but is focused on your customer instead of yourself.
And thanks for walking us through each of the points of the framework and the brand script. And for those of you who would like to hear some additional detail around that, you can listen to the episode that we had where we had Donald Miller on the podcast. JJ, I was actually at meeting with someone for coffee last week, and we started talking about some of these concepts, and she pulled the Building a Story Brand book out of her bag. Which was really funny because we were talking about it. It's the second time that had happened in our recent time period. I was actually at our church, and the series that they were on was all formulated around the StoryBrand framework, which was really interesting too. Awesome. So it just, they all keep all these dots keep connecting. It all just keeps kind of pointing back together, which is why I knew we'd figure out one way or another to get you on the podcast.
Yeah.
So when you talk about this ends in success and helps avoid failure, does the character know what success looks like at the beginning, and do they know what failure looks like at the beginning, or do they need some guidance toward both of those pieces?
Yeah, I think, failure is essentially like they're already experiencing failure. The only reason they're coming to you is to solve a problem, right? The only reason I buy aspirin or Tylenol is because I have a headache. The only reason I buy Tums is because I have a stomach ache. Those brands solve a very specific problem for me. And so that's why. So I already know I have a stomach ache. I'm looking for the answer. So when you're talking about failure in the story, you don't have to really pile it on, right? You don't want to be manipulative with failure and go like, oh, if you don't do this, you're going to die or you're going to go bankrupt. No, too much, because now they're going to feel manipulated. But you have to address it and just acknowledge that the pain that they're experiencing or the frustrations they're experiencing are going to continue to happen. When it comes to success, we like to say is kind of like flour in the recipe for bread. You can have cups and cups of flour and talk about success all the time. And so success, you want to do both short-term and long-term success in casting a vision for your customer. So what's the immediate things that are going to be solved for them? But ultimately, what does their life look like 10 years down the line if they start this process now of engaging you? With failure, you actually only want to talk about acute failure. So what immediately are they going to continue feeling? But success, you want to talk about acute and like short-term and then also long-term success. And when you do that, it gives somebody an aspiration to shoot for, to identify with. And so you want smiley, happy people on your website experiencing your product or experiencing your product or service. You want to talk about it all the time. That's really the benefit language. So once you make this, for step one, if you make a phone call, what is the acute success that they're going to feel or immediately success they're going to feel? And then maybe by step 3, what's the long-term success they're going to experience through this?
And from a practical application perspective, I can share what we've done on the Catalyst Sale side. And actually, this is what I'm going to take a page out of your book and try to get some free consulting out of you guys.
Do it.
I know that you have the workshops that come up and you hold those. You hold them in Nashville. You have one that recently happened in Seattle. You also have guides that you teach. So what's the guide program like? You have StoryBrand guides that are out there in the marketplace that could actually help companies with this, right?
Yeah. So our workshops, we have an online version or we have a live version where you come to Nashville and train with Dawn and I and our whole team, or we have private workshops where we come to you and work with your whole team in your space. And those are really designed to teach you how to do this, how to use the StoryBrand framework to create messaging, kind of foundational messaging through a story that you can apply to your website, your emails, your sales pitches, pitch decks, anything. It's basically a new way of communicating that puts your customer or audience first. So we teach you how to do that. What our guides do is our guides do it for you. Essentially, let's say you read the book or you went through the workshop and you're like, I'm in, I get it, I 100% understand this. I don't have time to create 10 new sales sequences, but I also don't have time to onboard somebody into the framework and teach them how this works. Our guides are already certified marketers, they're web designers, they're social media experts, and they will take your brand script or create one with you. And then from there, just create your marketing for you. They essentially become a fractional CMO for you.
Awesome. And we'll include links in the show notes for everybody to get out to the Building a Story Brand or the StoryBrand website. And ways that you can connect with JJ and that you can keep track of the workshops, including the online workshop. So I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here. So the first version of the Catalyst Sale website was probably the same version of any website that you see. If you see 100 websites, it probably looked like 99 of them. It was all about us and our background and areas of focus and where we spend time. And then we changed it up, and I thought we did a pretty good job, but I found out that we were actually talking, and I keep saying we, so maybe this is a me problem, but we kept saying we. It's like, we want to help you, or we build sales capability and capacity. And we were starting to continue to put, even though we were cleaning up the language, we were shedding the light on us. Where we're at now is we've got this big tagline at the top, which is grow revenue and create predictability in your forecast.
Yeah.
That we think resonates with early stage founders, anybody who's running a company who's saying, you know what, I would like to grow business and create predictability in my business. Are we using too much jargon by using words like revenue, predictability, and forecast in there? Or are we speaking in plain enough language that that message is clear, or are we not bringing somebody in? So again, here's the live consulting coaching, but any thoughts on that first line, and what comes to mind for you?
Yeah. So my immediate reaction is I like it because I can step into that story. But so what's the first part? Give me the first part again, just the first part of it.
Grow revenue and create predictability in your forecast. Okay.
So give me so the grow revenue part is pretty clear. Yep. But when you say create predictability in your forecast, what is that? What's the end result of that? They create predictability in their forecast. What's the benefit for them in the end? What's the success?
Yeah, the benefit in the end is now you can actually start to plan, what kind of hiring do I need to do? How do I scale? What resources are going to be coming into the organization? How am I going to support those customers who are coming in? Do I need to add additional customer success members? Do I need to add additional implementation managers? Do I need to scale up my supply chain so that I can deliver product and meet demands rather than this uncertainty around, sometimes deals come in and sometimes deals go out, and I really don't know where they come from, but we seem to be going in the right direction.
Yeah. So then the only thing I might say is changing that second part to say something along the lines of, so you say something like scale up. So wait, what was the first part of it again?
Grow revenue and create predictability in your forecast. So grow revenue. Yeah.
So grow revenue and scale up. Okay. I mean, you know what I mean? Like that. Yep. I don't hate the second part, but anytime, this is kind of what you want to do with anybody who has a tagline like this or anything. If at any point somebody has to say, explain that a little bit more, then you probably missed it, right? So that's the question I always ask. Even if I actually understand, you want to treat these taglines and things like you're trying to explain it to a fifth grader, right? Even though that language that you're using, everybody on the inside track, everybody who's founder or who's in sales will be able to understand what that means, but you're causing them to have to think a little bit too much.
Yep.
And people don't have time to think these days. It's not that they're dumb. It's that we're receiving now about 5,000 commercial messages a day. And the ones we pay attention to are the ones that are clear, concise, and I can understand with under 3 seconds. So if you make me think, you're going to lose me. In fact, I think depending on the research you read, when somebody comes to your website, you have between 3.7 and like 5.1 seconds to grab them. So if they have to say, well, what does this mean? Or they even have to think a little bit deeper about it, you are at risk of losing them. So I'm not saying that, say, grow revenue and scale up is the answer, but if that second piece really leads to what leads to scaling up, then just say scale up.
Well, and I think the piece that really resonated with me is we're talking about their problem from a sales perspective. We're not talking about their problem from an organization perspective. Having that predictability is going to drive something different inside the organization. And that's what this should be about if we're talking to founders and CEOs. And so thanks for humoring me as we went through that. And it brings me to one of the questions I wanted to ask, which is we all, I think, get wrapped around the axle in our own, and here I am talking jargon, and we get wrapped around the axle and stuck in our own word and stuck it up in our own vocabulary, and we don't like speaking in plain English for whatever reason. I look at this website and I say, hey, we're speaking in plain English, but then you go through with someone who I had a conversation with someone and we have the word false starts on here. And when I was talking to somebody about it, they're like, well, what's a false start? And I thought, well, man, who doesn't know what a false start is? But you realize these jargon that we bring to some of these conversations, not only the conversations that we have with the people inside our workplace, but the people with our customers, especially when we bring jargon from our workplace over. Can you speak to language and like what you've learned either from your work in entertainment to your work with StoryBrand to your work with many customers? How can we communicate better, or how can we clean up our language so that we speak more plainly with each other?
So I think when it comes to language, the thing that we try to do is when we use big words, it shows how small we are and how much value we bring to the table. And really what it's doing is confusing people. So we want to just get down to the most simple language possible. And the fastest way for me to get to that simple language is to think through what is the benefit that this customer is going to get when they experience this thing that I'm trying to explain. That's the quickest. Another way that we actually tell people to try to see if you're using too much inside language is take your laptop to Starbucks and don't be creepy, but go up to somebody and just say, hey, can I just have you look at this website for a second? And open your laptop, show them the website, and give them 3 seconds to look at it. Then close your laptop and ask them 3 questions. All right, based on what you just saw, what do they do? How does it make my life better? And how do I get it? And if they can't answer those 3 questions after looking at your website for 3 to 5 seconds, then you're too complicated.
You know what scares me to death?
What's that?
That I think I could ask my family those 3 questions, and I don't know that they'd be able to answer them. Much longer than the couple of seconds here. So, wow. Yeah, I mean, and that's really,
and so,
right?
What you kind of just described to me of, essentially the grow your revenue and scale up, that's ultimately how you make their life better, right? Which is why that should be your tagline or your big line on the thing. It's about the customer. So that still doesn't tell what you do. So how it makes their life better is most important. So that needs to be biggest. You should probably have some kind of call to action in the top right, which should be either call to set up an appointment, buy now, something in that space so people know how to get it.
Okay.
And then underneath, maybe in smaller lettering, describe what it is that you actually do. So what is it that you ultimately, to get people to grow revenue and scale up, what is it that you do for them?
Yeah, so we will go in and we will first evaluate product market fit. We'll go through a Catalyst Sale methodology, evaluate product market fit, gather information about how their customers perceive them, how people inside the organization perceive them, and then how the leadership perceives the organization. So there's an analysis. So getting into a 3-part plan, there's an analysis that takes place. There is an assessment of goals, and there's a identification of gaps that exist in the organization that will prevent them from reaching those goals. And then we look to address those gaps either through people, you're training people, process, implementing systems, or technology, implementing tools.
Gotcha. So this is not the right language, but you could even just say, like, right underneath that, we help you get better sales processes, better tools, and implement better technology, or something like that.
Yep.
Something that just says, like, we give you something. We're consultants. We give you a plan, even just that, not even we do it. You could say, get the plan that will give you better processes, better technology, and better tools.
Yep.
Something like that says what you do. Now, in those 3 things, the analyze, the 3 steps you just gave me, that's your plan, right?
Yep.
So even with that plan, give me the step 3 again. What was step 3?
So it was analyze,
identify the gaps,
goals, and then identify the gaps and address those gaps. Yep.
Okay. So even there, when you identify the gaps for them, what does that mean for them? What do they get out of it?
They get a report back, an analysis that says, here's where some risk is. Here are some of the gaps that you'd want to address. Here's where the risk is. And here is what potentially happens with success, or what potentially happens if we don't address those gaps.
Gotcha. So maybe potentially I'd have, if we really spent some more time, I might be able to dig down. But instead of identify the gaps, the benefit for them is they get to avoid pitfalls or avoid risks.
Yep.
Or be prepared for pitfalls, or be prepared for crisis, or you know what I mean? So Now instead of identifying gaps, I don't really know what identifying gaps means. I mean, I do, but I have to think more. But then when you tell me, I will get a report that will prepare me for any upcoming crisis, which is essentially, or I will get a report that tells me where's the opportunities that I'm missing out on.
Yep.
Now you've given me the benefit.
Got it. Yep.
So that's where, when going back to breaking down to the most simple language of, people need to understand not only what you do, but how it makes my life better. And then ultimately, how do I get it? And when you can boil it down to that simple, and especially if you're going to say, I would say if you err on any side, or you want to really comb over your website or your sales deck or anything like that.
Yep.
The place that you really want to focus is, where have I stopped with feature? Where have I stopped the story with feature of saying, we're going to identify the gaps? That's a feature. Make sure you go to the benefit of it.
Yep. That is clear. Awesome. Thank you. See, Jody, free consulting.
Well, that worked out well.
I hope the audience gets something out of that. I mean, I think that's as you go through and you kind of get, and we've talked about this a number of times on the podcast in the past, you get caught in your own echo chamber, or you don't see those blind spots that are around you. And it's through having a conversation like we just had with JJ, where you start to say, I really, as much as I thought we were doing some of those things, I really was ending with feature. Like, we end a statement with applying our proven Catalyst Sale methodology. Who cares?
Yeah. They don't know what that is.
They don't know what that is.
It's not proven to them. Yeah.
Right. So we started the conversation around pin collecting and Disney. And right? So I want to kind of bring it back there. So when one of the reasons I'm a fan of Disney and what Disney does is, I know we're always going to get a high level of service whenever we stay on property, stay on location. I always know that whenever we go on a vacation in and around the resort area, everybody's going to leave and be happy with what they did and want to have spent more time there. Why is that? What is it about Disney that, and I hope this isn't too much of a softball question, but why is it that Disney just kind of works for so many different people? I mean, I've got a 12-year-old and I've got a 15-year-old, and then we've got my wife and me, and we're all different. So why does that work inside a corporation, a company, an experience like Disney?
Well, I mean, obviously there's a billion things that, that go into it. A couple of things that jump out to me that I think that I've taken away for StoryBrand, in particular, like our workshops that we put on, is one, they connect to nostalgia really well because they build in moments. And those moments are often connected to our childhood and things like that. But from my own business, like when people come to our workshops or when we do private consulting, we try to create moments. This magical, essentially like moment that people can put a thumbtack in and say something happened there. I experienced something that could or could not have changed my life, but I had fun or it was a great memory. And so in our workshop, I'll let the cat out of the bag a little bit here, but we actually have a place where we show this commercial from South Africa that's a whiskey commercial. And at the end of it, we actually take a shot of that whiskey that we've imported from South Africa to celebrate all the hard work that everybody just went through in order to create their brand messaging. And that is a moment that people remember. And we don't have to do that in the workshop, but we pause to celebrate and we pause to essentially honor what has gone in and to create a moment. And Disney does that better than I would say anybody. And then secondly, I think the difference between, I lived in Southern California for a long time and I was an annual pass member at Disneyland, but I also went to Six Flags and I went to other amusement parks. And for me, the difference in Disney is in the details. When I'm waiting in line for a ride at Disney, I may be in that line for an hour, but all along the way, they're making it a full experience for me. They're giving me kind of just like fun little funny jokes. They're giving videos, characters are showing up, and it's really about my experience. The focus is on me, truthfully, that I'm having a good time. When you go to Six Flags, you are kind of, I would say, like herded into this area that's about efficiency for them. It's about these chained lines that you're just kind of standing in. There's not a lot of entertainment often, at least when I used to go. And it was just about that I felt like I was being put into a system that worked for them, whereas Disney created a system that worked for me. And that really is something that I've learned when it comes to, in particular, the StoryBrand framework, is no matter what you're doing, the story is not about you as a company. The story is about your customer. So when people walk in to our workshop from the very beginning, I don't care if the entrance makes sense to me or where they're supposed to sit makes sense to me or works for our company. We need to make sure that when they walk in, they are having an amazing experience. They know everything is very clear. It's not confusing. They're not feeling overwhelmed because it doesn't matter. I don't need to stand up and kind of like expout, how much information I have for them. If their lives don't change through this process, then this was a wasted experience. So I think Disney does that really, really well, is every step of the way they're creating moments and the journey is about the customer. It's not about the ease of the park.
And I think that all of us can do that with our customers. I mean, it just doesn't matter the product that you're delivering or the service that you're delivering. And I tend to have more experience on the B2B side of things.
Yeah.
But these are experiences that you can create for your customer if you take the time to listen and understand and be part of their story rather than just forcing your key talking points across the bow or across every one of your PowerPoint slides and making it about you. Just make it about them. And there's a subtle difference in the way that in that language, just as JJ was talking about there's just these subtle differences where people get involved in the experience. And I think the other piece that resonates for me is how that drives and supports engagement. And everybody's looking for more engagement.
Yes.
People want to get engaged in their story or engaged in their story. They don't necessarily want to be engaged in your story. You're making the choice to engage in their story when you're looking to serve them and support them as a service-oriented organization. So, JJ, this has been absolutely awesome. I've really enjoyed the discussion. Can you remind everybody who's listening where they can find out more about a StoryBrand, where they can find out more about the work that you're doing? Where should they go?
Yeah, so our website is StoryBrand.com, and that's where you can find out about our workshops that we have going on, both our online and live workshops, and you can find private workshops from there as well. I think anybody who is maybe just resonated with one or two things that were said during this and is like, I just love a little bit more information and try to figure out what are some quick tips I can do? I'm not going to go to the workshop right now, but what are some quick things I can do? They can go to 5minutemarketingmakeover.com, and you can either spell 5 or use the number 5-minute marketing makeover. And there's 3 videos there that get into some of the principles from the framework and give you some quick tips that you can implement now on your website. So either StoryBrand.com or 5minutemarketingmakeover.com.
Awesome. And for those of you out there who've not listened to the Building a Story Brand podcast, where JJ and Don are co-hosts, and Don interviews some amazing guests. I know Jody mentioned that Lee has been on there before, or Lee Cockrell has been on there before. It is an amazing podcast, and the range is phenomenal. I like the different types of people that you have on there. And I know you, Don, joke about free consulting, and at some point he is going to have a lawn care person on there. But you guys, one of your recent episodes was on, investing or giving back and investing in the community by employing local artists, which was that was not an episode that I was expecting out of the StoryBrand podcast. But you guys are doing some amazing work. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. It's so fun because just really our heart is, we really do try to live by the StoryBrand framework, in that we're not the heroes and our customers are the heroes. And our customers really are people who are in sales, and they're trying to build businesses, and they're trying to grow their company, and they're trying to just even provide for their family. And so it goes beyond just marketing. We really focus in marketing, but this Building a Story Brand podcast really is targeted towards anybody who wants to be in leadership or grow their business. And so because we really believe that we want to help everybody do that, we bring in any guest who can help kind of not just build business, but live a great life. So it's a lot of fun. I love it.
Awesome. And you've mentioned whiskey twice on the podcast, so I can't let that go without asking. So what are you drinking today, or what do you enjoy? Not right now, because we're recording this a little bit early, but what's your go-to today?
Well, today it's Mai Tais, because I'm actually in Hawaii at the moment. I'm in a hotel room in Hawaii. I'm performing a wedding this afternoon, and I will be leaving here and going down and having lunch and having a Mai Tai. So rum, I guess, is the drink of the day.
Well, I hope for the sake of those in the wedding party that you don't partake in the Mai Tais before the wedding. So just,
I make no promises. I promise to be coherent. But hey, I'm in Hawaii. I need me Mai Tai.
Awesome. Well, JJ, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, JJ. And thank you for listening to the Catalyst Sale Podcast. This was a great talk with JJ. So if you know someone who would benefit from everything that he shared, please share this with a colleague or a friend. And you can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. Let us know what you think.